Why are China and Japan arguing over a few rocks with 0 people and 1 confused seagull? Today, we unravel 600 years of history in 12 minutes. Welcome to the story of Diaoyu Islands, or Senkaku Islands, plus the mysterious side character, Okinawa. If these islands could talk, they would say, "Please, stop fighting over me. I'm literally uninhabited." Our story begins in the Ming Dynasty, where Chinese envoys sailing from Fujian to the Ryukyu Kingdom, she wrote down the names of islands they passed, including Diaoyu. These records marked China's maritime boundary. Japan in the 1400s, busy slicing each other with katanas. 0 interest in Diaoyu. Enter the Ryukyu Kingdom, centered on today's Okinawa. Ryukyu was a polite kingdom, so polite that it had 2 bosses. Boss number 1, China. Ryukyu sent tribute missions. Boss number 2, Japan's Satsuma domain, after Japan invaded in 1609. Imagine having 2 landlords and paying rent to both. That was Ryukyu's life for 270 years. Then, in 1879, Japan said, "Enough, you're ours now," and turned Ryukyu into Okinawa Prefecture, a province of Japan. China was not happy. But China was weak at that time and could not stop it. Now the story heats up. In 1894, Japan and Qing China go to war. The first Sino-Japanese War. China is losing, badly. And right in the middle of this chaos, in January 1895, Japan's cabinet quietly makes a move. See those uninhabited islands called Diaoyu? Looks empty. Let's put them under Okinawa. This decision is secret, and it happens 3 months before the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Then in April 1895, China is forced to sign the treaty, handing Taiwan and its nearby islands to Japan. And this is where the 2 modern narratives begin. Japan's version. We incorporated Diaoyu before the treaty, so it has nothing to do with Taiwan. It belongs to Okinawa, case closed. China's version. You grabbed Diaoyu during a war you were winning. That's not peaceful administration, that's opportunistic land taking. Diaoyu should be returned together with Taiwan after World War II. Same timeline, same events. 2 interpretations that will never match. And just like that, the foundation of today's island dispute is born. Fast forward to World War II. Japan loses the war. The Allies declare Japan must give up everything it took through aggression. The US Army looks at the map and says, "Okinawa is extremely strategic. We'll take care of this one." So in 1945, the US places Okinawa, along with the nearby Diaoyu Senkaku area, under American military administration, calling the whole region the Ryukyu Islands. During the war, US President Franklin D. Roosevelt actually wanted to weaken Japan's future military power and reward China for resisting Japan. So he privately suggested to Chiang Kai-shek, after the war, would China like to have Okinawa? Yes. America literally tried to gift China an entire island chain. And Chiang Kai-shek said, no thanks. Why? He worried accepting Okinawa would look like China expanding territory. He didn't want to anger the Japanese people in the future. He believed Okinawans should decide their own fate. And honestly, China already had enough internal problems after years of war. So in 1945, ROC reclaimed Taiwan, but did not claim the Ryukyu Islands. The US continued to administer the Ryukyus, including Diaoyu Senkaku. America became the temporary babysitter. By 1951, many Ryukyu residents were protesting U.S. military rule. The U.S. decided it was time to formalize the post-war arrangement. So Washington drafted the San Francisco Peace Treaty, placing the Ryukyu Islands, including Okinawa and the Diaoyu area, under long-term U.S. administration, which later ended with the islands being returned to Japan in 1972. But here's the catch. The ROC was not invited. The PRC was also not invited. Why? Because after the Chinese Civil War ended in 1949, China had two governments, and the U.S. didn't want to choose sides in the treaty. So both Chinese governments later said, "We never agreed to Diaoyu being treated as part of the Ryukyu Islands and later returned to Japan." But by that time, Communist China was rising. The U.S. needed Japan as a major Cold War ally, and Washington was not listening to either Beijing or Taipei. Geopolitics, historical debate. And that is how the stage was set for the modern Diaoyu/Senkaku dispute. For 70 years, nobody cared about Diaoyu. Then, in 1968, a UN study revealed the seabed around Diaoyu/Senkaku may have oil. Suddenly, these empty rocks became the Dubai of East Asia. In 1971, as America planned to return Okinawa to Japan, China and Taiwan both announced, "Wait, Diaoyu is ours." Japan said, "America is just returning our islands to us." China said, "You mean returning our islands to you?" Result? Diplomatic explosion. Students in Hong Kong marched in the streets. The Protect Diaoyu movement was born. In the 1970s, Japan and China wanted peace and trade. So Deng Xiaoping said, "We don't need to solve this now. Our children can solve it later." Both sides quietly agreed. Japan continued administering the islands, China continued claiming them, but neither side wanted a fight. This era is known as the shelve the dispute period. If only the grandchildren kept this attitude. In 2010, a Chinese trawler collided with Japanese Coast Guard ships near the islands. Japan arrested the captain. China freaked out. Protests, diplomatic freeze, tourism bans, threats everywhere. Japan eventually released the captain, but trust between the two countries went straight into the ocean. In 2012, Japan nationalized 3 islands: Uotsuri, Kita-Kojima, and Minami-Kojima, all of which are part of the Diaoyu Islands. Japan bought them from a private Japanese family who had owned them since the Meiji era. This was because, back in the 1890s, Japan let a businessman develop the islands, and his land rights were inherited and later sold to the Kurihara family. The US and Japan respected those titles, so the islands simply remained private property. Japan said it bought the islands to stop right-wing politicians from purchasing them and making the situation worse. China didn't believe that at all. China said, "You changed the status quo. You promised not to." Huge protests erupted across China, and Chinese Coast Guard ships began entering the area every week, and they never stopped. This was the moment the dispute turned into a permanent diplomatic migraine. In 2013, China announced an Air Defense Identification Zone, ADIZ, over the East China Sea. It covered Diaoyu Senkaku. Japan protested, South Korea protested, the US sent B-52 bombers through the zone. No permission asked. That was Washington's polite way of saying, "We do not care about your ADIZ." Today, the area around Diaoyu Senkaku is like a high-tension playground. Japanese Coast Guard patrols daily. China Coast Guard regularly enters the same waters. Both sides shout over loudspeakers. Both sides accuse each other of illegal intrusion. Fishing boats flee like innocent bystanders. Basically, the world's most serious game of get out of my yard. Okinawa is not officially disputed, but because Okinawa used to be the Ryukyu Kingdom, and because Ryukyu used to pay tribute to China, some Chinese scholars sometimes question, is Okinawa's history more complicated than Japan claims? Japan hears that and reacts like, don't you dare. Meanwhile, the US, which keeps big military bases there, says, everyone calm down, please don't start World War III on our doorstep. Okinawa is strategically important because it sits between Taiwan, China, Japan, the disputed Diaoyu Senkaku area. So whenever Taiwan tensions rise, Okinawa becomes part of the conversation. The US position is very simple. We don't care who owns Diaoyu Senkaku, but as long as Japan controls it, the islands are covered under the US-Japan Security Treaty. Meaning, if China attacks those rocks, America is legally required to help Japan defend them. This is why Beijing sees the islands as a sovereignty issue, a security issue, and a US containment issue. And this is why Japan sees them as a red line, a symbol of national pride, a shield for Taiwan. So in the end, what do we have? China. Diaoyu was ours for centuries. Japan took it during our weakest moment. Japan. Senkaku is legally ours and always part of Okinawa. US. We don't want trouble, but if trouble comes, we're bringing the Navy. All because of a few tiny islands with no houses, no shops, no electricity, and not even a 7-Eleven. If this doesn't prove that geopolitics is emotional, nothing will.
Thank you for watching PastCast, where the past echoes through today. If you enjoyed the satire, scrolls, and scandals, like, subscribe, and ring the bell before the next empire falls.